Hello and welcome to part 6 on this series of Practical UK Survival. Now, in the last episode we looked at first aid kits, and in this episode we're going to focus on the emergency actions, or the actions on you should take when an emergency situation occurs. And if you've ever been in that situation where you've been left feeling a bit stressed, not knowing what to do, or thought that maybe afterwards with reflection you could have handled it a little bit better, then this video is for you. Now, regardless of the situation that you find yourself in, if you've got a carefully thought out set of actions or actions on an event occurring, then that is always going to lead to quicker reaction times and better decision making. And that's because you've got the benefit of going through this in slow time without all of that stress, which can cause people to flap and make bad decisions. So I think it's a great idea to just think about what if, the sort of main scenarios you could find yourself in, then how you're going to deal with it. And then when that actually happens, you've already got a plan, and all you need to do is execute that plan. Now, regardless of the scenario that you're planning for, then your actions on is always going to have three main parts. You've got the actions on, which is the main event that occurs. You've also got the condition, which is a specific condition which may change what actions you need to follow given that specific set of conditions. And then you have the actions themselves. And if you can remember the actions with a clever mnemonic, then that is definitely a bonus, because it can help you recall them when you're feeling a little bit stressed. So let's go through that with a worked example, and we're going to use getting lost in the forest as an example. So in this case, the actions on would be getting lost, the condition would be in the countryside or in the forest, and then the set of actions that I would follow, I'm going to use the mnemonic STOP, and that stands for stop, think, observe, and then plan. And let's go through all of those now in a little bit more detail. The first action to take is to stop, and that's really important, because if you make a decision, or you start trying to walk your way out of a situation when you don't know where you are and you're feeling a little bit panicked, it can lead to making really bad decisions that can either make you in a worse position. For example, you could wander aimlessly around trying to find where you are and end up getting even more lost, or you could make a really unsafe decision and do something like walking through a dangerous situation when there's poor visibility. Now, this actually happened to me in my early 20s, and I was out walking in the Brecon Beacons. I got lost. We did start to panic a little bit, and because we didn't stop and we just carried on, we actually wandered onto a frozen river that had a dusting of snow on, and we didn't realise it was there. And as we started to go across it, then the ice started to break up. We could hear us cracking around us, and I'm not going to lie, that was a very scary situation. So having to just stop, think about what you're going to do before you do anything is a really good plan. So if you need to have a bit of food, make yourself a brew just to calm yourself down, that is time well spent. So do that first. The next action you need to do is just to think, and that is all about taking stock of what you actually know, so you can think your way out of the problem. For example, think about any landmarks you may have passed on the way in, think about what direction you're travelling in, and how long it's been since you last knew your location. For example, I know that I walk about 3 miles per hour on a firm trail when I'm not with the dogs. And so if it's been 20 minutes since I last knew where I was, then I'm never going to be further than about a mile from that last known location. And if I know what direction I've been heading in, then I can pretty much get a reverse bearing and walk back to that location. So it's all about just thinking and taking stock of all the information at your fingertips, so that you can start thinking about how you're going to get out of the situation. The next action I want to take is to observe, because sometimes I might be able to see a landmark or something which will help me pinpoint my location on the map. Now, I know if I can see 3 landmarks and I can take a bearing to each landmark, I can reverse that bearing and do what's called a resection to triangulate my position on the map. Now, with 3 landmarks, that's going to be pretty accurate, but I can do it with 2 or even 1 if I know how to judge the distances, although of course your degree of accuracy and your confidence in that location is going to be a lot less with less than 3. Now, I'll also be keeping my ears open as well and thinking about things like, can I hear distant traffic? Can I hear the sea and things like that? because they can also give you an indication of where you are on the map, and it's all useful information to put into your plan. Now, another thing you might want to think about when you're observing is if you do need to kind of stay overnight, then you want to think about what resources are around that you can use to build a shelter or make a fire if you really have to. And the next action we need to take is to plan. So think about all the information that we collected during our observe phase, and then think about all of the resources at our disposal. You need to think about things like how long you've got left before it gets dark. Think about how cold it's going to get overnight. You know, are you equipped to deal with that, or do you need to actually shelter in place and make a fire to deal with that cold? And the beauty about making a plan is that any decision you make when you think about it logically is going to be much better than an action that you need to take simply because you've run out of time. Now, you don't need to have the whole plan worked out when you start. You could break it down into different phases. So for example, I may see a hill in the distance and I may think to myself, right, well, I'm going to climb up that hill and then I'm going to see what I can see, and then I'm going to plan from there. So don't think you don't need to have all the answers at once. You may break it down in stages, but just be aware of the time and plan ahead, and that way you're not going to be forced into an action simply because you're out of time. One of the best things about thinking about actions on is that over time you'll build up a whole library of situations that you know how to deal with, and then should they ever occur, you're going to be that much more confident going into them, have a much better response time, and that much better able to handle those situations. So it's a really great thing to do. So I hope that was useful, and in the next episode we're going to look at how to self-rescue, and that should always be our aim when possible. So if you don't want to miss that video or any of the others from the series, then think about subscribing, hit the bell icon, and I shall see you there.